Okay guys, thanks for making the journey over to this video. Petunia, you have to behave if you're going to be on my lap, alright? So, perfectionism, associated with addiction, depression, suicide, eating disorders, the whole shebang. And believe it or not, I have a long history of unfulfilled perfectionism. It's like every time I strive for perfection, God or the universe or whomever is responsible for this yanks any possibility out from underneath my feet and reminds me that it's not going to happen for me in this lifetime. And I think that is the universe trying to be nice and save me a lot of heartache and pain and effort, because I mean, what do we know about perfectionism? Like, realistically, we all know that perfectionism doesn't pay off. Like, you're never going to be perfect enough. You're never going to be good enough for everyone at the same time. Was that the universe trying to tell me something? Made me bite my tongue while I'm talking? And my experiences with striving for perfection and falsely believing that being perfect would bring me happiness or bring me stability or bring me a sense of worth from inside myself started when I was a young kid. I was probably 12 or 13, and I was coming to the realization that my family life wasn't what I thought it would be, that my relationship with my mom wasn't what I thought it would be, that my mom wasn't who I thought she was. And I was slowly starting to realize that there was probably nothing that I could do to change that. And so I got really obsessed with trying to change myself and trying to fit myself into a box of what I thought perfect was. And I believed that when I fit myself into that box, that all the other people that I saw who I thought were perfect, then my life would transform into their lives. Because you get what you work for in this life, don't you? Like, you get what you deserve, I thought. You get what you deserve, and you deserve a papaya. Yeah. And I remember, this is really embarrassing. Like, I've admitted, I fess up to a lot of stuff on this channel, but like, this is actually embarrassing. I was 12 or 13, and I was like genuinely obsessed with Mary, Kate, and Ashley. And this was a huge source of shame for me. I couldn't admit that to anyone. I knew that if I admitted to liking them or being interested in them or wanting to be like them, that I would just be made fun of endlessly. But I was obsessed with them because they seemed so perfect. And in the movies and the shows that they were in, that kind of family dynamic seemed so nice, with the mom and the dad who like get along and supportively take care of their kids and encourage them to be like functional human beings without gross levels of emotional enmeshment. And at the end of the day, that's what I wanted. Like, I wanted a family that loved me, and I wanted people in my lives that accepted me and supported me and allowed me to be me without shame or condescension or control. I wanted what I thought perfection would bring me, and that was people who cared about me and people who loved me unconditionally. I thought that if I could be perfect, you know, like Mary, Kate, and Ashley back in the day, if I could be perfect like that, that I would have to be loved, that I would have to be accepted, that I would be beyond reproach. And I think of the amount of time that I spent trying to starve myself, trying to exercise my body into a perfect shape, trying to have perfect skin, trying to have perfect hair, trying to force myself to have all of these things that seemed to come naturally to other people, and struggling so hard to get them that I was digging my own grave with the anxiety and the shame and the pain, and traumatizing myself by rejecting who I was. And I think of how silly and how fruitless that was, and how much it set me up for failure over and over and over again in my late teens and early 20s. And I think of how, silly that was. And yet I sit here in front of you today, quickly approaching 29 years old, and I fall into the exact same trap. I was doing really well with the whole perfectionism thing for several years. When I got to my highest weight, and I got to the point where I realized that, I can't do this anymore. I've talked about this. And when I started being really good to myself, part of that being good to myself was accepting myself. And I feel like you can't accept yourself and hold yourself to perfectionist standards at the same time. But I'd gotten to a point where I had started to let go of the perfectionism. And instead of perfect, my catchphrase that I invented for myself was, I'm perfectly adequate. I'm not perfect, I'm perfectly adequate. And anytime that I would do something or say something, if I was somehow disappointed in it or I started to beat myself up, I would just say, Lily, it wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly adequate. You did your best. Just let's move on. I was getting really good at that, and I was feeling really powerful in that ability. But then last May, two things happened. The YouTube unsubscriber bug started, and I noticed from then that growth in my channel slowed down remarkably. And I noticed that I was getting a lot of unsubs. Even to this day, I look at my statistics and all the analytics for the YouTube channel, and it's like I have lost almost as many subscribers as I have. And that has been so discouraging, because I know that this is happening. People comment frequently, like, hey, I got unsubscribed from your channel again. What's up with this? So it's like, I know it's happening, but at the same time I question, am I doing everything wrong? Is this because I'm inherently unlikable? It's because I'm just like a shit show of a human being and no one likes me? Possible. But that's been really frustrating. And the other thing that happened last May was that I got an email from my mom, which I have talked about before. I'll link it up above. And she said some really hurtful things, which is her way of being. That email and the couple of exchanges that I had after that email with her were kind of the nails in the coffin as far as our relationship goes. And with the dissolution of that relationship, I've had to admit a lot of things. Like, I'll never have a relationship with my mom, and I don't have the capacity to fix this, even though it meant so much to me. And so people don't change unless they really want to, and I can't change them. And that was around the same time that I really started looking at my own behavior and how much my behavior resembled my mom's behavior, and how the way that I thought about and treated people was very similar to the way that she thought about and the way that she treated people. And I have to say that going through that process has thrown me into such a tizzy and I have felt so confused, and it has left me feeling really destabilized. I've felt so destabilized within myself that external acceptance and validation feels even more important than it used to. And I'm very aware of the shortcomings of that kind of need. I'm trying to be aware of it, but to be perfectly honest, there's only so much that awareness can do at this point in the healing process. And in such a situation as that, the perfectionist drive really comes back up. I still have like a really deep longing in me to be able to go back in time and have different parents, to know what it felt like to grow up and not have been completely consumed by anxiety and fear, to know what it felt like to feel acceptable in your own home. Because I know that if I had had those resources, I would have been able to do so much more with my childhood and adolescence and in my early 20s, and I think of how much that has cost me in my life, how much I've let it cost me in my life, and I feel so disappointed. And I've found myself getting into this habit of thinking like, yeah, but Lily, you know, you're perfectly adequate, you're pretty good. And I just think, yeah, but you could have been better. You could have been more put together. You could have had friends. You could have like learned how to be with people. You could have not been a person who perpetuated trauma. And I have those feelings, and one response to those feelings is shame and wanting to hide and wanting to present a different front to the world, which is what I did for most of my life growing up. It was always a front of everything is fine. Don't ask me again. And I just want to revert back to that, and I just want to pretend that everything is fine. I want everything to be fine, and I want to be the perfect girl who is loved by a perfect person and who is perfectly accepted, who lives in the perfect house with the perfect pets and has the perfect degree and the perfect income with the perfect hair and the flawless skin, who just seems to glide everywhere without aging. And I know that a big part of that is fallacy and it's fantasy, but I can't help but thinking like, God, it must feel so good to just wake up and be perfect. It must be so relieving, and it must feel so soothing to get to that moment where everything on the to-do list is done and you're having a wonderful hair day, because every day is a good hair day, and your skin is clear and your body's toned, and you got a great job and a great place to live, and the place is clean, like clean. It must be wonderful. And I found myself wanting that so badly. And so I guess I really, you know, have no choice other than to just come back to the practice of reminding myself of adequacy above perfectionism. Perfectly adequate is enough. It's good enough. It's good enough for me. Reminding myself of what makes me happy, and that's not necessarily having a perfectly clean home. It's having a happy home. It's having a good relationship with my partner. It's being able to communicate and and feeling heard. It's quality time with my family. And all of those exist without the need for external approval. As long as I'm acting in integrity and doing my best to be a better version of myself. And coming back to my gratitudes, what I'm grateful for, what I love about life, and what my goals are. You know, my goals aren't social media domination. It's just to get by with enough and to try to help people who are going through similar processes that I am, and accepting that I'm gonna be me for the rest of this lifetime. Maybe next life I can be perfect. Who knows? Anyway, your thoughts and comments down below are very, very welcome and appreciated. Until next time, make better choices for yourselves. No one's gonna do it for you, but you don't have to be perfect about it. Take really, really good care. I'll see you all very soon. Bye.